Good morning and aloha. Aloha. Hey, don't look too intimidating out there. This is okay. We're just, nope, it does not work. I'll just give that back. We just like to thank Leigh Cummins for her technical expertise. One of the things I learned in business, that was probably one of the most important things I learned in business, is that my skill set is limited. And there are some things I do very well, and there are some things that I do not do very well at all. And it is very important, and you need to remember this, that you hire people who can do the things that you can't do well. Because there are so many things that you will find that you'll be roaring forward in your business life and get to a point where you can either challenge it yourself and stumble through it, often poorly, or you can find someone who has perhaps a different personality or different skill set that can take advantage of that. You might think my spelling is poor too, but it's not. I love playing with words, and one of the things that has happened in my life, do I need the mic? Everyone hearing me? Okay. One of the things that's happened in my life over and over and over again is the opportunity to do more with less. In that I often had very limited resources to work with. And because of that, I did the best I could with what I had. So if you want to see the other angle of it, you're going to get more out of this by listening to less. At least I hope you do. So let me tell you a bit about my roots. This cute little group of kids is, which one's me? The one with the tie? Yeah, second one in. My brother Cal, my brother Gordon, my sister Peggy, and myself. This was a family picture from a long time ago. I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. All my siblings own companies that they started themselves. My parents both started enterprises, some successful, some less successful, but nonetheless, I have an entrepreneurial spirit that seems to run pretty deep in my roots. The other thing is that my grandparents were entrepreneurs. So I had no choice. I think it was just inherent in who I am as part of my genetics. The one genetic that I have, though, that made sure that I did well in my life was that I'm a child of God and that we are put here to succeed. And it is just a matter of finding your way in life so that you can take advantage of the God-given gifts that your Heavenly Father's given you. The banana bike, a relic of the 60s. I didn't realize until 5 years ago that when my father helped us buy our banana bikes, that he was actually teaching some very fundamental business principles. When we were 9 years old, when I was 9 years old, my brothers were a little bit older, we moved from a small town into a little larger center of Lloydminster. Now, Dad had just had a car dealership that had failed. And he had borrowed money from everybody. Anyone that would lend him money, he borrowed money from him. And we moved up to Lloydminster. He moved to Lloydminster so he could start driving taxis. Taxis you're paid by commission. In other words, the number of calls you get will determine how much money you get in the end. Well, Dad would go up and work during the week, and then on the weekends, Mom would make arrangements for one of the kids to go up. I was 9. My brother was 10 and a half, and my older brother was about 12 and a half. And she would find someone in our town that was going to Lloydminster, 35 miles away, and we would catch a ride with them. I can remember going up with a teacher that I had no idea who he was, but we jumped in his little Volkswagen and drove to Lloydminster. And over the weekend, I would dispatch. Well, dispatching was taking the phone calls. In other words, the phone would ring, someone would call and say, hey, I need a taxi at such and such a place. And then we would take the call, and I would radio my father. This was before cell phones. It was rotary dial. Anyone ever seen a rotary dial phone? Yeah, okay, hey, that dates us, Win, that dates us. So it was a very fundamental thing that even a 9-year-old could do. We had a notebook that we had to write things in, and most of the time I did it right, and sometimes I didn't. But Dad would get more calls if someone was there to answer the phone, and in turn, if we had more calls, then he could make more money for our family. So we moved up to Lloyd. School was over, we moved up to Lloyd, started living in a house, and one day he came home and said, "The manager at Marshall Wells store has given us a great deal. I bought 3 banana bikes, and in 1968, these were cool." He said, "We have a deal though. I couldn't pay for them all at once, so we made a deal. And that is that each of you now has a loan with the Marshall Wells store. The loan is for $42, and you're going to need to pay them a payment of $6 a month." Now, when you're 9 years old, that's a pretty ominous situation, but I was employed. I had a job, and I made 25 cents an hour. So every evening, 6 days a week, Mom and Dad would decide which one of us is going to go down to the taxi stand to dispatch until 10 o'clock at night. We'd answer the phone, we'd do our homework, we'd watch some TV, and we'd get paid for it. So it was all good. But what this did is it instilled in us the work ethic, the opportunity to work and benefit through that work. I had the coolest bike on the block. In fact, my best friend, who is still my best friend, other than my wife, of course, wanted to borrow my bike just because it was cool. And like you say, 30-odd years later, that's a pretty cool thing. So the banana bike became the vehicle for me to learn about financing, about interest, about payments, about being on time for work. He captured me and my brothers. We needed his work, and in turn, we received a reward through it. So it was a great opportunity. I never realized that until about 5 years ago, that my father had such wisdom in that. This is another wonderful man. This is one person that I'm named after. This is George Martin Osborne. My name is Leslie George Harper. George Martin Osborne, when he was 29 years old, enlisted in the Canadian Expeditionary Force and ended up serving in World War I at a place called Vimy Ridge. Now, he had come from England to Canada, and he was a bit of an adventurer, but he started farming, and he left the farming to go serve God and country. And in April 17, 1917, he was on Vimy Ridge trying to take Hill 135 with his battalion. Well, he ended up with a piece of shrapnel going through his elbow. And there was no sulfa drugs, there was no penicillin, there was nothing that could stop the infection, so he ended up with gangrene in his arm. And the surgeons decided it was going to have to be cut off. So 6 inches down from his shoulder, they cut his arm off. So here was a man, 29 years old, 30 years old. What kind of future would he have as an amputee? When he went into the military, his writing was beautiful because he wrote with his right hand. When he was released from the military, his writing was really awkward. But I was talking with my uncle at a family reunion we had a bit ago, and I asked him, "What was Grandpa like? Tell me about Grandpa." And Uncle John said, "You know, Grandpa didn't know there was some things he couldn't do." I said, "Well, explain." He says, "Well, when he was an older man," this is a picture of him, see that arm, or lack of arm? He had a pension, of course, because of his amputee, or his arm being amputated. And so every month he'd get a little bit of money from the government. Well, he went up into an area that was very, very poor. And the people that were in that area didn't have steady income. They had they had some food, they had wild animals, they had fish. They could get along to a certain point, but there's things, the essentials like flour and sugar and some of those things you have to buy, and they had no money to buy it. So Grandpa decided he was going to start a store. And what he would do is he'd buy different products, sell it to the people on credit, and then in turn, in time, they would be able to give him the money back when the furs were sold or the crop came in. So this was fine, and the business prospered. But what happened is Grandpa decided to build a store. And a one-armed paper hanger, you'd wonder if he could he could build a store and take care of some of the things. Well, he decided he could. And in particular, he decided to shingle the roof. Anyone here ever shingled the roof? All right, good Elders Corn projects. Well, Grandpa had one arm. How did you make out on the roof with two arms? Grandpa had it figured out. He would take the wooden shingles, put them under his arm, his little stump of an arm. He would take nails, put them in his mouth, and take the hammer up with him onto the roof. Climb it up on the ladder, take a shingle, put it down on the roof, kind of hold it in place, take a nail out of his mouth, and drive the nail directly into the wood, just to hold it there, and then he'd tap it in. He shingled an entire roof that way. Now, this is a guy that didn't know he couldn't do that. He farmed 320 acres of land and cleared it all with one arm. Mom said he used to take the tractor literally and run into trees to try and knock them down to make it easier. But he didn't know he wasn't supposed to be able to do that. He should have been back in Rochdale, England, being taken care of by his sisters and his aunts, you know, and coddled and supported and encouraged. But Grandpa wasn't that kind of person. He was very determined, very stubborn, and I have those genetics. I was told, well, I finally figured out that I had the patience of my father and the impatience of my mother. This is my mother's father. And this is Vimy Ridge. This is a war memorial that it's just a reminder as to how things can happen. See, the thing is, he lost his arm, but it wasn't a loss, if you think about it. Many, many things happened in our family because he lost his arm. First of all, we all gained an incredible determination to move forward and do the things we needed to. The other thing is that little bit of money that he was given every month helped not just himself, but helped a lot of other people. So every opportunity that you get, take advantage of it. I'm going to read you a scripture, and I bet some of you know it, but I hope you remember it. It's D&C 22, 7 and 8. Anybody familiar with that? If thou should be cast into a pit or in the hands of murderers, this was when Joseph Smith was in Liberty Jail, and the sentence of death passed upon thee. If thou be cast into the deep, if the billowing surge conspire against thee, if fierce winds become thine enemy, if the heavens gather blackness, and if all elements combine to hedge up the way, and above all, if the very jaws of hell shall gape open the mouth wide after thee, know thou, my son, that all these things shall give thee experience and shall be for thy good. The Son of Man hath descended below them all. Art thou greater than he? One thing you need to remember is that when we are on this earth, every experience that we are given is an opportunity to learn. Do not bemoan anything that happens to you. We were trying to start our company, or we'd given up, or the first one had happened and failed. As Alpha said, a wonderful, successful failure. We learned so much from it. There's treasure times about that. But one day I was working for a garbage company called Laidlaw Waste Systems. And I was doing mechanical work and driving, kind of doing their operations for them. And one day I decided to come home for lunch so Alpha could go go visit our new niece who was in the hospital. And so she went to the hospital and I was there with the kids. Well, pretty soon the phone rang. Les, we got problems back here at work. Can you come and take care of what's going on? I said, well, yeah, I'll be there soon. Well, the phone rang again, and it was one of our customers. We collected used oil, very hazardous material, and one of our customers called up and said, we've got oil all over the ground here. Our tank's overflowed, and we need someone over here right away. And I said, okay, we can handle it. We'll take care of that right away. And then Alpha called up and said, yeah, well, I was at the hospital, wasn't feeling right, so I decided to go see a doctor here, and, well, they want me to go to Edmonton, 3 hours away, for surgery, emergency surgery tomorrow. Can you find somebody to take care of the kids and be up here this evening? And I hung up the phone and didn't say anything, but the impression that came over my mind, and it was perhaps one of the most inspired things that happened to me, the question that came to me is, what can I learn from this situation? Later that day, I was in Edmonton, Laidlaw had been taken care of, our new business had been taken care of, the customer was happy. The kids were at friends or somewhere, and I was in Edmonton with my wife. And after that day, I realized that there was so much more that I could do. I had so much more potential to do things than I had given myself the mindset of being able to do. You know, it's gotten to a point in my life where I almost obsessed with doing more than I think I probably can. I have a bad habit of taking on more things than I normally should. But life is never boring. I always have new things on the go. I always challenge the norm. Distracting a little bit from what we're on, you will run across all sorts of situations in your life, in your business life, in your private life, your church life, when people will say, and they won't necessarily say it in these words, but they will say, this is the way we've always done it. Nobody does it any other way. And when you hear that, whether it's said in that way or in tones that tell you those same things, challenge it. If you feel impressed to challenge it, challenge it. Don't break the law. Don't break the commandments, but if you feel that your progression is being hindered, and I mean spiritual progression is being hindered by stalling, chase it hard. I think we have a video. There we go. Do I know how to do this? See, that's why. This is the company I started, the second company I started. Uh-oh. There we go. We do.
Like highway construction, we repurpose over 600,000 kilograms of used plastics annually. They all get shredded, cleaned, sorted, and sold. Filters are crushed, cleaned, and sent to steel recycling companies. 1 million kilograms of used filters are recycled yearly. We offer a variety of other products as well, such as spill kits, absorbent pads, paint regulars, drum storage, and many other products that will help manage oil wasted properly. Call our team of dispatchers or book your pickup online today. Our state-of-the-art dispatch system will get your product picked up within a few days, accompanied by necessary paperwork, and in most cases, immediate payment to the customer for the product collected. Little Dipper is proud to serve our clients. New equipment and employees are constantly joining our team. We are growing to exceed your needs. Please contact us with any questions or concerns. Toll free at 1-888-333-0657.
So that was the company as it appears today. I sold Little Dipper 4 years ago. It was a recycling company, as you might have seen. There was oil filters and plastics that we collected. We started out very small. We ran it out of our kitchen. That 0657 number, it used to be our house number. And that's, it's kind of funny how little things remind you of where we came from. But yeah, we basically had one old truck that we bought. Actually, when I was working for this garbage company, we had a vice president come through, and the waste company I was working with only wanted to deal with non-hazardous materials. So when they bought out the local company in town, they ended up with the street sweepers, the used oil collection, a number of different things. And we were off on holidays. The president came through and said, change that, change this, and get rid of the used oil. So it was my job to find somebody to buy this company, buy this business entity. It wasn't doing well. The equipment was old and antiquated. It wasn't making any money, and oil had no value at that point in time. So I spent a couple months trying to figure things out and trying to find people to buy it. Nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted anything to do with it. So one day when I was in a bit of a growl or determined or inspired, I went into my boss's office and said, look, nobody wants this thing. Nobody wants the business because it has no value. However, if you want to get rid of it, I'll buy it from you. And I offered them a third of what they were asking. I had nothing to lose. They had nothing to lose. It was the perfect situation. They wanted to get rid of it, and I saw an opportunity. He agreed. He agreed, and I bought the company, or we bought the company. 15 years later, we were making every day in income what we paid for the company. We went from collecting, there was a newspaper article, we were collecting 220,000 liters of oil in a year. By the time we finished, we were collecting 1 million liters of oil a month. It was amazing what happened. And one day, somebody phoned up and said, you know, you've got a bunch of used oil, you want to sell it? And I said, well, again, nothing to lose. I said, the only way you're going to secure supply for your new refinery is to buy the collector. And he says, okay, well, how much do you want? Gave him a bold price. They came back with a bold answer. Sold. A year and a half later, we basically were retired at age 48. And the rest of the work from here on in has just been fun. We bought a bunch of houses that we renovated, and they're providing rental income. We've flipped a few. But just by stepping forward and making bold moves and feeling impressed to do them, incredible things happen. When we were running the company, we had problems. Every company has problems. Don't ever think that you're going to go into business and things are going to go smooth. We had been in the company about 10 years or so, and I was getting frustrated. We were having trouble with staff. I would train somebody to run a piece of equipment, say for instance that filter crusher, the thing where the guy was hurrying around, and he would break it. And I'd come in and say, well, didn't I teach you to do this thing? And he'd say, well, no, you didn't. We were going through so much staff because of the type of work that we were doing that I couldn't keep up with the training. I couldn't remember who had received what training. So it was getting frustrating. So one day I came across a book that kind of changed the whole process by which we worked our company. And that is, well, let's see if anyone can guess what it's all about. Does anyone know what this is? What is this called? Does anybody know what this is called?
A hidden Mickey.
It's called a hidden Mickey. In other words, something that looks like Mickey Mouse. And we've become very passionate Disneyites. We love that guy. That guy saved our company. It may sound really strange, but what happened is I was looking in my Rotary magazine one day, and I came across a book called The Disney Way, and it was talking about 10 different principles that makes Disney Corporation run the way it does run. And so I read it. I read the book and I read the book again, and I thought, this is the most incredible thing. Because if they're successful and they're in a service industry dealing with people, I can be successful because I'm in a service industry dealing with people and with staff and with problems and with challenges, and I want to be able to basically make this company stabilize without me having to be in every place at every time. So we started incorporating some of the Disney principles into our company, into what we were doing. One of the most important ones was a principle called empowering your staff to make decisions. We had those trucks that you saw earlier, the big ones, we would send them out 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours away to go pick up oil at customers. And in some of those situations, we would pay the customers for their oil. So our driver, Graham, is one of my guys. He was one of the guys that was shown there in the video. He's been with that company almost 15 years. With me for over 10, and then 5 otherwise. But what happened is he would go out to a customer. He'd pull into a place where they had oil. He'd put his hose in the tank. He'd start pumping it out. Well, when he was finished, he'd go in with the receipt, and he'd go in with a checkbook. I gave all my staff checkbooks. They had to make decisions on the spot because I couldn't be there all the time to decide how much oil the person was picking up, what the quality of the oil was, and how much the person should be paid. So I left that to my drivers. I trusted them. I empowered them to make decisions. Disney does the same thing. If you're in Disneyland or Disney World and you walk up to a ticket booth and say, well, legitimately, hopefully, walk up to a ticket booth and say, I was here yesterday with my family and we have lost our tickets. What can we do? In most cases, Disney will let you go into the park on a day pass, and they will stay in contact with you to make sure that your experience is the best experience it could possibly be. That's what we did in Little Dipper. I had staff that I did not see for 5, 6 months at a time, but I kept in contact with them on an almost daily basis. I knew what they were up to, and I knew they were taking care of customers because they were writing checks to all sorts of people. I had to trust people, and that's another thing that you'll have to learn to do if you want your business to succeed. You have to be able to trust the people you're working around. Some people will fail you, but generally speaking, most people can be trusted. You will have the spirit and you'll recognize things because that is the only way that it'll work. If you use your own intuition, that works sometimes, but not all the time. Sorry. This is the company that got left over. Elliott Petroleum, our little dragon, Walt. The fellow who started this company was Walter Elliott. And what happened is he sold out to a large company, a public company that thought they were going to do great things with it, but they took all the cash flow out of the company to work on some of their other projects. So Elliott Petroleum was sitting there basically going out of business. They had closed the doors, they were emptying all the tanks, and that's where we happened to be. One of my drivers went out there to clean out the tanks, and he came home with a full load very early morning. I came out to talk to him just to see what he was up to, as he wasn't normally there that early in the day, so we got talking. 2 hours later, we were at Elliott's site. 4 days later, the deal was in place. They were going out of business. I had spent a bunch of time thinking or researching the idea that if we sold oil, new oil, we could in turn get the used oil from the customer when they were finished with it. It was something that I played with all the time. I would walk into anywhere, a store, a business, whatever, and take a look at something and go, maybe we should start manufacturing this based on our supply of plastics. And I would do the scenario. Just for fun, I would write up a business proposal based on that idea. And just kind of do it in my head, a little bit on paper, research it. And after you get to a point where you go, okay, this could work, and I'd write it in my book and say potential business ideas for later. Or I would get to a point and go, oh, yeah, okay, well that makes total sense why I can't do that anymore, and I'd go on to the next one on another opportunity. So Elliott Petroleum was one of those things where someone had said, we could sell new oil and in turn pick up the used oil after. One of my customers had suggested that to us. My drivers and my staff used to come up with ideas all the time, and I would listen to them, and we would talk about it. And sometimes if I felt impressed, we'd research the idea a little bit more and get involved in other things. Someone mentioned about biofuels. Anyone know what biofuels are? That's making diesel fuel from waste fats and oil, cooking oil, that sort of thing. Well, we did that. As a business owner, I decided, okay, let's build a little mini biofuel plant. And we started building it. And I have a bad habit that Walter Walt Disney had too, and that is that when he got an idea in his head, it really didn't matter how much it cost, just as long as we saw the idea through. Peter Pan ride. Anyone ever been to Disney and rode on Peter Pan ride? One of the favorite rides. 1955, that ride was put in Disneyland. Do you know what the budget for that ride was? There was no budget. Walt Disney had an idea, and he wanted to see that idea to the end. Millions and millions and millions of people have been on that ride and loved it. With me, fortunately, I was only accounting to myself and the banker. So if I pulled 10 or 15 grand out of our cash flow to try an idea, it worked. And my wife, yeah. Always accountable to the spouse. So it's the most with the least. What can you accomplish on the least amount of money possible? Least amount of resources possible. You have to count on yourself. If you do not believe in yourself, do not start a business. If you do not believe in yourself, do not step out of this room. If you do not believe in yourself, you have to learn to believe in yourself, because you are the biggest tool that you will ever have in the success of your business, of yourself personally, in everything you do. You have to remember that you have God-given gifts, and you have to learn how to take advantage of those. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Everyone will make mistakes, and in fact, enjoy them. Make the best of them, because those are the times you will learn the most. When you're not failing, you're not moving forward, because you will learn from your failures and in turn take advantage of those to make your successes. You have to have failures. Guarantee it. Not that I want you to go out and fail, but there will, if you're going to move forward, you're going to make mistakes. That is a promise. That is a complete promise. The other thing is, don't be afraid to rock the boat. There are too many people who are comfortable with the status quo. And sometimes the status quo is just that. It's right in the middle of everything. And most of us, I don't think, want to be there. I read a book when I was on my mission by Og Mandino. I don't know if you've ever heard that name. The World's Greatest Salesman. And one of the things he said in there, you know, as a missionary, you have good companions, and some of that aren't as good. You have good experiences, and some that aren't as good. But one of the things he said in there, and it's pretty basic, is that the lion does not lie down with the lamb. If you are going to stand out, you need to stand out. You need to do the things that are different. And again, you have to use the impressions that come to you to take advantage of those things. Sometimes you'll get promptings to do things you will not know why. And that's a whole nother hour, but there are things that have happened in our lives that we cannot figure out at that time why they're happening or why we feel impressed to do them. But they all come together at some point in time, and it's important to remember that. This was one of our side businesses, and I think there's something about this that a story needs to be told about. It goes along with the most with the least. And if any of you have weak stomachs, I apologize, but this story is important. We had 330 of these wonderful little plastic boxes. And of course, everyone knows what they are. They're, human waste is contained in a tank. Well, the truck that we used to service these portables, we would go out on a route on a almost daily basis, and the truck broke down. I had no other equipment available and had to figure out how to take care of my customers. It was a Thursday actually. Everybody wanted their portables for the weekend, for their barbecues, for their chuck wagon races, for all sorts of different things. So I had some empty, cleaned units, took them out with me. Put them on a trailer. Actually, I took our truck, rented a trailer, and lined up all these portables on the trailer. Got down the road to where we had to be, thinking that, okay, everything should work, and got to the point where, well, some had been used more than I'd hoped. Well, I won't give you the gruesome details, but after it was all over and I had to bail some, and the police officer looked at me in disgust because I had splashed myself. He walked away back to his vehicle and let me go home. The point be taken that sometimes you have to do whatever is necessary to make it work. Life is not almost always pretty. I sat in a gas station at 11 o'clock one night trying to decide what I needed to do. I had to go another hour and a half north of where I was to take care of 2 portables. It was 25 below, minus 25. And I had to decide whether I was going to go up there and take care of them or whether I was going to turn around and go home. I made the choice to go. The toilets were both full, they had to be serviced, and I would have received the call next morning if I hadn't gone. So I went up, did my thing, drove up there, drove back, and then from where that gas station was, I had 2 hours to drive home. So I got home, I don't even want to say what time in the morning. And because this was my part-time job, I still had to be at work at 8 o'clock the next morning. So there wasn't a lot of sleep that night. But sometimes you got to do what is necessary to make things happen. So whenever you see a portable, think of that. This is our crew. This is our family. See, even in Canada, I wear aloha wear. This was a picture taken after we had put together a luau for a Habitat for Humanity project. I'm on the board of local Habitat, and we have a lot of fun with that. And I love taking on challenges, and something you need to remember, which is just as important as every other thing that I've said today, you have to give back. You have to be willing to give back to your community, to your family, to your church, to anything that you can possibly do to serve others. Because there's great rewards in being of service to others. King Benjamin taught it, the gospel teaches it constantly. And it's something that has to happen. If you think you're going to be successful in business because of you and for you, stop right now. Don't even think about it. You have to be focused on doing good for other people to be successful yourself. We have five kids, and they've all been involved in our business in one way or the other, from crawling under houses, doing pest control, to changing the toilet paper out on portable toilets at powwows, to you name it. They all have a great work ethic. The 2 redheads are running Elliott Petroleum right now at home. The 2 girls, yep, sorry. 2 female redheads. Our daughters, Celeste and Amy. You might have met Amy, she was here earlier. They are at home running our lubricant company, and very proud of them. And also our housing business too, so. And there's us. And at age 52, I get to dress like this because I'm unemployed and volunteering and happy to be doing it. We love being here. We love being a part of this campus and sharing in what's here. It's a treasure of spirit, culture, and weather. And we just love being a part of it. So grateful for that. Just to share with you one of the things we're doing on campus, you might, we'll let Leigh take care of that. This is where we'll conclude. The Give and Take, who's familiar with the Give and Take project? Okay, well, this is our new promotional video. Nobody, other than our very exclusive. Oh. Wow. See, you got to make mistakes. Doesn't always come out smooth. We just need to scroll her up a bit. Can we, let's start it over if we can. Yep. Click. We'll start over. You didn't see that part. Okay. Any questions? Wow, I'm really good at explaining things. Win.
How do you stay optimistic so well all the time?
You have to find your happy place. You know, it may sound funny, but when you're in the trenches, every once in a while you just have to step away and say, okay, I'm going to do my own thing. And you know, whether it's for 5 minutes or an hour or 2 hours or a day or 2 weeks holiday, every once in a while I get to the point where I'm just going, okay, let's regroup. I think everyone needs to do that. Being a workaholic, you need to recognize when you need to step back. And on our business with Little Dipper, we had a roller coaster going that simply, at times, I couldn't get off it. I had to wait until the ride stopped. And it worked. Yes?
How did you get your capital to start up your business?
Don Jaffrey. And car accidents, no. We were young married. We had 2 kids and we're broke. Don was 29 years old, worked for a federal, like CBC, the television company, and he had cash and no family. And so that was the guy that introduced me to the church that I lent my bike to, a great friend, and he said, you know, tell you what, we'll put my money and your business, your sweat equity in it, and we'll make it happen. The thing that was interesting is after a year of giving him every detail on what I was doing, he said, you know, if you want, I want to go around the world on a big trip. He said, buy me out. It was only $6,000 we started with, so it wasn't an enormous amount of funds. My lesson is that the first company we had, which was Westfield, that failed, we had over 30 partners. And you cannot run a business like that. The buck has to stop somewhere, and you cannot have all that influence focusing on what you're doing because you won't make the right choices. An entrepreneur classically makes decisions on 75% of the information that he really needs, and that 25% is just pure gut. And when you have other people that are trying to influence what you're doing based on what they think is right, you'll lose. You'll lose constantly. So if you have to raise your capital personally, do whatever you can, as much as you can personally, and keep control of what you're doing. And say your prayers and ask for inspiration, because it's the only way we managed on most of it. Okay?